Morning all. There are still plenty of interesting games I'd like to look at from the recent FIDE World Chess Championship Candidates Tournament. One decisive game not covered yet was Peter Svidler against Veselin Topalov. So Peter Svidler, playing white, played e4 and Veselin Topalov played e5 after Nf3 Nc6. So Ruy Lopez territory, bishop b5, a6, the most common move, bishop drops back, knight f6. It's all fairly standard beaten territory up till here. The most usual move is bishop e7. Topalov played bishop c5 here. So this is the Ruy Lopez Archangelist and Moller defences. Now c3 was played, b5. The bishop actually dropped back to c2 in this game. Usually actually it drops back to b3, but it went to c2. That's played as well quite a bit. Now black played very energetically in the centre. Veselin Topalov played the very energetic d5, and white now is not going for a passive setup with d3, but rather strikes in the centre as well with d4. So a lot of central tension has emerged here. D takes e4, that's the theoretical move. And now usually knight takes e5 is actually played here, and it's meant to be about equal as 31 games in my live book. In this game we see d takes e5. That's played quite a bit as well as 11 games before. Queen takes, rook takes, although we've got the queens off. Bit of a yawn for some of the spectators that the queens are off, but it's a very sharp position. And actually in this position, believe it or not, the move bishop takes f2 has been played before 3 times. In this game we see e takes f3, and they're both meant to be about equal, so let's continue. E takes f6, g takes f6, and now bishop e4, and we're kind of virtually out of book now. So out of the opening, Peter Svidler has got a small advantage apparently here from an engine point of view of the bishop e4. A dramatic position really. These treble pawns in effect. We see now bishop d7 protecting c6, and white logically now plays a4. So trying to use that pin on the a file, and black now castled queenside. Very sharp position indeed. It looks a bit dangerous to castle queenside with that a file. We see a takes b5, and now a very sharp move indeed in this position. If black played here a takes b5, I think white would be slightly better. It doesn't have to play a check or anything yet. It can actually play things like b4 and bishop f4 and just be, it looks as though white's going to be better comfortably in this position. So anyway, knight e5 is played, and after this move it's a very, very interesting move, because what of b takes a6? Are we in Veselin Topalov's deep preparation? We can take this pawn with 2 things, the rook or the pawn. So what is actually going on here? Well, let's see. If b takes a6, then bishop c6, hitting that bishop on e4, and white's going to be careful about this g file. Once a rook goes to g8, white's king safety is an issue. In fact, black is doing fantastically well here. For example, taking, there's rook takes d1, mate. There's pressure on d1 here, which is enormous. So b takes bishop c6, and if rook takes d8, then again this back row is an issue. If white throws in the check and then plays knight d2, f takes g2, and black is doing very nicely indeed. In fact, it looks actually very scary after rook g8 and maybe trying to hit f2. Very scary position indeed. Okay, so Peter Svidler, he's got to be careful not to play b takes. So it's a kind of weakness of the last move being celebrated there with the immediate bishop c6, which hits d1 and exposes white's lack of development here. All of these pieces at home, seemingly a bit of a ridiculous position actually. If you look at black's pieces in contrast there just visually. And if rook takes a6, then again there's a brilliant move here for black. Actually, I wonder if you can spot it, because white is actually threatening a mate in 1 with rook a8. So what does black play in this position? I might have given you a clue already. If I gave you 10 seconds here, what would you play with black? Okay, bishop c6 holds a8 and hits d1 again, and black is again better. If, say, bishop f5 check, then king b8, it's no big deal. Knight d2 to shield the rook, bishop b7, and black is doing very nicely. So it's a very, very tricky position where it seems after knight e5 it's too dangerous to take that pawn on a6. So white plays bishop f4. Black is doing well here now. After bishop takes b5, Topalov must be very pleased with his opening position right now. Pardon me. Knight a3 was played, and now rook takes d1. Pardon me. Releasing the tension, rook takes d1. What else can black do here? Well, maybe bishop e2. The engine is suggesting bishop e2 to encourage black to take on d8. To take is a mistake, as one celebrity on YouTube has mentioned. Here, actually, yes, it looks as though black is doing quite nicely here, controlling the d file. So it's a little bit strange if this really is so easy. If this position, it looks quite nice for black. So a little bit odd, maybe, that Topalov must have had a specific idea here for not playing bishop e2, for instead taking on d1. So after rook takes d1, the engine suggests white's disadvantage has been minimised by this exchange on d1. Now bishop e2 is played, and the rook's quite active. It uses the d5 square, rook d5. Maybe the point now is revealed, though, that black's play to play for rook g8 in this position, so it looks very dangerous for white's king. Okay, g3, and now bishop takes a3. Technically, though, the engines don't like this continuation for black. White's actually in the driving seat here, it seems, technically, after b takes a3. White has the two bishops. There is this annoying pawn on f3, for sure. The rook is active, though. White's use of the d file, it looks quite good here. Any attempt to move the rook, say with c6, bishop f5 check, rook d7 using the pin. This is good for white. So Topalov played knight g6. So threatening knight takes f4 with that pin there. Bishop drops back. So white's got that bishop pair and stands actually okay. It's a bit worrying about the f3 pawn, supported by the bishop on e2 though. Okay, rook e8, check, and now rook d4. With the rook now protected, actually bishop d7 is useful for rook d8, bishop c6 check. For example, this is quite dangerous. Bishop d7 is on the cards. Rook e5, g4 protecting the bishop, and also maybe one day the king is going to get out like this. a5, h3, h5, and then we see check, king a6, and white taking on h5. Even though he's doubling his pawns as an extra pawn for a moment, black takes, rook d8, and all of a sudden here this looks a little bit on the dangerous side. Maybe a4 secures a mating net. So this is dangerous for black. Knight e5, a4, threatening, rook a8 checkmate, c6 defending against that, rook b8. Now rook b6 is a menace. Knight c4, bishop d4, bishop takes c6 is on the cards now. c5, but now f6 drops. Is black being ground down? Knight b6, bishop d8. Now here, if knight takes a4, then bishop c6 is too dangerous, threatening rook a8 mate. That's actually winning. So that's ruled out here. So white has really come back after the opening to have a very good position here. Knight d5, check. Now takes on a5. Black seems to be getting the worst of this end game. Rook e5. White now just takes on c5. So we're going to head to an opposite colour bishop ending with white material up. Rook takes e4, rook takes d5, rook takes a4. There's only one pawn in it, but these two pawns are doubled. Rook f5. It's going to be two pawns up soon if black's not careful. Bishop g5, rook c4, counter-attacking here. Bishop d2, rook c7. But now white has a trump card, the h pawn. He pushes it, h4, king d8, check, king 8, rook d5, threatening a mate in 1, f5, giving the king f7, h5. This pawn is very, very dangerous here. Already, if rook takes c3, for example, then h6 is actually winning. For example, here, here. And if here, now we've got a neat trick, actually, with bishop f6, if nothing else. But rook d7 is winning, but this is winning as well, just to win the rook. So the pawn is very, very dangerous. Rook c4, rook d4, because black was actually threatening rook g4, check. Now rook takes c3, but h6, and this is still dangerous, this pawn here. Rook c8, it's winning for white now after h7. Black cannot stop the pawn, because after king f7, we see now bishop d8, threatening to queen, and if king g7, well, black actually had to resign here. If king g7, white protects the pawn with rook d7 check, and the king's going to be evicted out or mated if king h8. Alternatively, if the king went over here, king h8, in this position, we just queen. So an interesting game. It seems as though Peter Svidler held his nerve after what seemed to be a potentially very bad opening position, with black having great activity, like in preparation here, where it seems as though a4, the effectiveness of a4, with these pieces though sitting at bay here, there's a fantastic resource here for black in terms of just knight e5, much better than a takes. Knight e5 with pyrotechnic resource, bishop c6, either on rook takes or b takes. This pyrotechnic resource to hit d1 seems very logical in retrospect now. In fact, maybe from an engine point of view, rook takes d7 is interesting to knock out bishop there. But this is a theoretical exploration, but apparently black is okay even with rook takes d7. But later on, it did seem intriguing, this exchange on d1 voluntarily. The engine suggests black did have a healthy kind of small advantage with bishop e2 here, or even bishop d3. Taking on d1 must have had a specific reason in this position. Maybe the effectiveness of rook d5 was underestimated. So on rook g8, if the rook had taken here, then this is apparently just a draw. Actually, this position here is a draw with perpetual check, because if ever here, then this is better for black. This position with black threatening f2, so this would be horrible for white. So he has to accept a draw there. But on this just g3, I guess maybe black had underestimated just leaving the pawn there for some time. The pawn is left there as a thorn in white side for some time. And if bishop b6, if the bishop hadn't captured on a3, white can actually apparently just play this, bishop takes on h7, throwing a check, and actually just eliminate this. I mean, it looks a bit scary to play like this, but apparently white's okay here. This is okay. There's nothing concrete, it seems, that black's doing with the pawn on f3. So yeah, after getting this position, it seems as though black got ground down in this game systematically. Was it necessary for black to play h5 here? This is another question. Well, maybe this sort of stuff is happening if black didn't do anything here instead of h5. Let's just give black a move like king b8. Well, actually that's dangerous for black's king safety anyway. This is a dangerous position because these bishop e4s are always dangerous. If rook e7 here, bishop takes f6. It seems the bishop pair is making itself felt at the moment, so maybe that's why h5 it seems it's difficult because white does seem better here. Okay, so h5, and it was a bit of a grind after that. Okay, yeah, I just thought a quick overview of this game. Hope you enjoyed it. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.